It started with a whisper. Not the kind that carries warmth or love, no. This one was sharpened like a blade, and it cut through everything I thought was safe in my life. Maura leaned in as I was washing the last of the Sunday dishes. The scent of rosemary chicken still lingered in the air, the warmth of the oven fading. My hands were sunk deep in soapy water, my favorite old dish towel slung over my shoulder. I just placed my mother's floral serving platter in the drying rack, the one she used every Easter. That's when Maura stepped close behind me, her voice low, calm, calculated. "I'm pregnant with your husband's child," she said. I didn't turn around. I couldn't. The plate I held felt like a stone in my hands. My ears rang with the silence that followed. She might as well have screamed, but she didn't. She said it like a casual truth, like she was letting me know the weather had changed, as if what she'd just said wasn't a bomb dropped in the center of my life. Then, as if twisting the knife wasn't enough, she let her gaze drop to my shoes, old gray slip-ons I wore every Sunday. She chuckled, just once. "It's time to start replacing the old things around here, isn't it, Eleanor?" That name, Eleanor, not Mom, not even Mama E, like she used to call me back when she wanted something. Just Eleanor. Distant, disposable. She walked away as if nothing had happened, her footsteps soft on the hardwood, the sound of her silk dress brushing her legs, like she was floating. I stood there, a statue in my own kitchen, hands submerged in cooling water, a cloud of lemon-scented bubbles clinging to my fingers. I stared ahead at the pale reflection of myself in the microwave door. I looked like someone else, like someone left behind. I don't remember turning off the water. I don't remember walking out of the kitchen, but I do remember hearing her laugh a few minutes later, bright, girlish, floating through the living room like perfume. My son bit and laughed too, though his was hollow, tired. They were watching a movie, something with gunfire and chase scenes. Thomas, my husband of 43 years, said something from his recliner. His voice sounded normal, steady, not like a man whose life had just been turned inside out. But maybe that's because it wasn't his life that had been blown apart. It was mine. I sat down at the edge of the couch and folded my hands in my lap. My knuckles were still damp. I could feel the ghost of the dish soap on my skin, sticky and sharp. I didn't speak. I didn't cry. I didn't ask Thomas for answers. Not then. I just watched them, all three of them, in my living room, surrounded by the photos I'd framed, the curtains I'd sewn, the memories I'd kept alive in every thread of this house. And suddenly I realized something. I was no longer part of the scene. I was background now, an extra. When it was time for them to leave, I did what I always did. I walked them to the door. I smiled. I said, "Take care." I even hugged Maura. I don't know why. Habit, maybe. Or maybe because I knew it would be the last time I hugged her and meant it. She smelled like expensive perfume, like cold flowers. Her belly wasn't even showing yet, but I could feel the weight of what was growing inside her pressing between us. After they left, I sat down in the empty living room and stared at the turned-off TV. The black screen reflected the flicker of the porch light, and nothing else. That night, I didn't sleep. I laid beside Thomas, staring up at the ceiling, listening to the slow rhythm of his breathing. He slept like a man with no guilt, or maybe just a man too tired to wrestle with it anymore. I thought about the years, about the meals I'd cooked, the wounds I'd bandaged, the birthdays I'd planned. I thought about the promises we made when we had nothing but each other. I thought about our first apartment in Macon, where we couldn't afford curtains, so I sewed old pillowcases together, just to get a little privacy. And now, here we were, 43 years later, and the woman carrying his child had looked me in the eye and told me I was something to be replaced. But here's the thing Maura didn't know. I may be 67, I may move a little slower, and my bones might creak louder than they used to, but I am not something you throw away. I am not wallpaper you peel off when you redecorate. No, I am the foundation, and you don't walk into my house and try to bury me beneath it, not without a fight. Before I continue, I want to ask all of you to please give a like to this video and subscribe to my channel, The Silent Stories, for more stories like mine. Your support means the world to me. Also, I'd love to know where you're watching from, so drop a comment telling me which country you're tuning in from. It's incredible to see how far this community of wonderful people has grown, and I'm so grateful to be able to share my story with you. If you walked past our house, you wouldn't see anything remarkable. Just an old clapboard home with white shutters and a wide porch with peeling paint, the kind of place tourists ignore. But for me, that porch holds more than dust and splinters. It holds rocking chairs that have swayed through birthdays, burnouts, and broken hearts. It holds a welcome mat that's been replaced 3 times, and yet still seems to carry the outline of every soul that's ever stepped foot inside. This house isn't grand, but it's alive. Thomas and I bought it the year after Baden was born. It was a stretch back then. Thomas had just started working maintenance at the local factory, and I was stitching hems and mending curtains to make a little extra. We didn't have savings, just guts and grit. I remember walking through the empty rooms, my voice echoing off bare walls and thinking, we'll fill this not with things, with love. And we did, or at least I thought we had. There used to be laughter in these walls. Sunday breakfasts that turned into porch lunches, record players playing too loud, Thomas dancing barefoot on the kitchen linoleum, twirling me until I got dizzy and scolded him, then kissed him anyway. I raised our son here. Baden took his first steps in the hallway, right between the coat rack and the laundry basket. He used to sneak down at night to sit at the top of the stairs just to listen to us talk. Thomas always pretended not to notice, but every now and then he'd toss a wink up the steps and say something silly just for him. I held my mother's hand in the guest room when she passed. Her last request was that the house stay warm and kind. Always. I swore it would. That's why the betrayal didn't just crack my heart. It desecrated something sacred. This place wasn't just walls and beams to me. It was memory. It was legacy. When Morris said what she said in my kitchen, when she smirked at my shoes and called me old, like it was something rotten, she wasn't just insulting me. She was attacking my entire life. See, some people think legacy is money, or titles, or some big plaque on a building. But to me, legacy is what you quietly leave behind in people. It's the scent of cinnamon on a winter morning. It's the photo album stacked high in the linen closet. It's the fact that my son still asks for my pot roast recipe, even if it's his wife who cooks it now. I thought Maura understood that. At least in the beginning. When she first came into our lives, she was soft-spoken, polite. I remember the way she used to sit quietly beside me while I crocheted, asking about Thomas's favorite meals or Baden's childhood quirks. I welcomed her. I let her into this home, my rhythm, my ways. I gave her my trust like a warm blanket, and she took it, only to smother me with it years later. Over time, she stopped asking questions. Stopped showing up for birthdays. She became something else, all edges and ice. And still I told myself, it's just a phase, maybe she's overwhelmed. Maybe she doesn't know how to be close. But I know now it wasn't a phase. It was the plan. Because piece by piece she started trying to hollow this place out, replacing photo frames with digital tablets, pushing Thomas to modernize everything, the furniture, the bills, even his passwords, and he let her. Not all at once, but slowly, quietly, as if he couldn't see the home we built slipping between his fingers. I still remember the way he used to polish the banister every Saturday morning, the way he'd hum old gospel songs under his breath, while oiling the hinges of the back door. That man loved this house. He loved what we made. But now I'd watch him wander from room to room like a stranger, like a guest waiting for someone to tell him he could go home. That's what Maura had done. She hadn't just stolen my peace. She'd poisoned the roots. She'd made the place where love once lived feel haunted, and yet I couldn't bring myself to leave. Not yet, because leaving would mean letting her win. No, I stayed. I sat in the same chair by the front window every morning with my tea. I played my gospel records. I opened the curtains just like I always had, letting the sun pour in, because I wanted this house to remember who it was. I wanted it to feel my presence in its bones, to know that the woman who made it a home hadn't gone anywhere. I wasn't going to vanish quietly. Not for her. Not for anyone. You don't notice the silence at first. It starts gently, a missed comment over breakfast, a half-hearted nod to something you said. You tell yourself, he's tired, or it's nothing, because that's easier than facing the truth. Silence doesn't come like a thief breaking in. It creeps in like fog, soft, slow, and suffocating. That's how it was with Thomas. We had always talked about everything: the price of gas, the neighbor's new dog, what color to repaint the porch swing. We had our rhythm, small, steady conversations that stitched each day together. But after that Sunday when Maura whispered her poison into my ear, those stitches started coming undone. He stopped asking how my garden was doing, stopped noticing when I rearranged the living room. Even his jokes, the dry little quips he used to toss in during dinner, faded. I'd ask him what was on his mind, and he'd say, "Just tired, that's all," without ever looking up from his coffee. But it wasn't just tiredness. It was absence. I began to feel like I was sharing the house with a ghost, a quiet man who still wore Thomas's face, who sat in Thomas's chair, but who no longer shared his heart. Most nights, he'd go to bed early, earlier than he ever had before. He'd claim he needed rest, that his back was acting up, or he had a long day ahead. But when I'd tiptoe upstairs later, I'd find him lying awake, staring at the ceiling, his back always to me. There were nights I'd wake up to the faint creak of the bathroom door. I'd hear water running, long, aimless streams, and I'd imagine him standing there, palms pressed to the sink, looking into the mirror like a man trying to find himself again. One morning I followed the sound. I stood quietly outside the door, listening to him breathe. Slow, uneven. I didn't knock. I just stood there with my hand resting on the frame, not out of suspicion, but grief, because I knew whatever was going on inside him, I wasn't part of it anymore. Then came the money. It started with a credit card statement, stuffed between grocery coupons and pharmacy flyers. The envelope was from a bank we barely used. I opened it without thinking. We always shared finances. Always. There were dinners, pricey ones, at restaurants we'd never set foot in, jewelry stores, designer boutiques, charges I couldn't explain. It was like reading someone else's story with my husband's name on it. I placed that paper right next to his daily bottle of blood pressure pills. I wanted him to see it. I wanted him to ask me about it, but he didn't. He just moved the bottle and took his pill, like nothing was wrong, like he didn't see the truth staring him in the face. And still I didn't yell. I didn't throw the paper at him or accuse him of anything, because deep down I already knew. This wasn't about love, not the romantic kind. This was about fear, control, guilt. And that's when I realized Thomas wasn't betraying me out of desire. He was being held hostage. By shame, by secrets, by a woman who knew exactly where to dig and how deep. He was no longer my husband. He was someone else's puppet. Maura, meanwhile, bloomed. She would flit into the house without warning, dropping off teas or little gifts, always with a smile that felt just a little too wide. She'd touch my arm lightly, as if I were frail, speak to me in slow, sweet tones like I was a patient on the edge of slipping away. "I'm worried about you," she'd say. "All this stress, it's not good for the baby." The baby, she said it so often, the baby. Like it was a trump card she could play to silence me, like its mere existence absolved her of every lie, every dagger in her words. And yet something in her eyes, it wasn't maternal, it was smug, calculating. I started to feel like an intruder in my own home. The photos on the wall, they blurred. My favorite chair, untouched for days. My husband, shrinking away, a man who once held me with conviction, now flinching when I brushed his hand. Everything that once felt solid between us became hollow. And yet I didn't rage. I didn't scream into the void, asking why. Because I knew something deeper was happening. This wasn't just the unraveling of a marriage. This was the slow, deliberate replacement of a woman. And I wasn't going to wait around to be quietly erased. No, I was going to find the truth. And when I did, I would hold it like a torch, not to burn them, but to light my way out. You don't start with fire, you start with whispers, patterns, oddities, one or two things out of place. And then the knowing creeps in, not all at once like thunder, but slowly like mold working its way through a wall. The day I opened the filing drawer was quiet, overcast, no breeze. The kind of still day that holds its breath. I told Thomas I was organizing old tax papers, a chore boring enough not to raise suspicion. He nodded, distracted as usual, and went outside to sweep the porch like he was trying to make himself useful again. But I wasn't organizing. I was searching. I began at the bottom of the cabinet, the drawer with the oldest paperwork where things hadn't been touched in years. Tax returns, warranties for appliances long gone, handwritten receipts yellowing with age, our life in paper form. Then I found something that didn't fit. It was a slim folder, newer, crisper, sandwiched between an old policy for flood insurance and my late mother's funeral bill. The tab wasn't labeled. The paper inside was white and thick, printed in sharp ink. I unfolded the first page. Last will and testament of Thomas J. Whitmore. My name wasn't on it. I blinked once, twice. Surely I missed it. But no, there was a trust, a new one. Everything, the house, the savings, even the land behind the garden, all of it was to be passed directly into the care of Maura. She was listed as guardian and administrator for the benefit of the unborn child. Bidon's name appeared once, a small stipend, enough to keep the lights on, maybe pay a few bills, but not enough to own anything, to control anything. And me? It was like I never existed. No mention, no clause, no beloved wife line they toss in out of habit. Nothing. I sat there on the floor, legs folded under me, my fingers tightening around the paper. My breath was shallow, my hands were cold. It was one thing to feel forgotten. It was another to see it spelled out in legal print, in your own home, in your husband's handwriting. But it wasn't over. Under the will was a second stack of documents, medical this time, records, long and clinical, stamped with the logo of a private clinic I'd never heard of. Notes about cognitive decline, confusion, diminished mental capacity. A suggestion for Thomas to be evaluated by an outside party to determine if he was fit to manage finances. They were lies, every single word. Thomas was forgetful sometimes. Sure, he'd misplace his glasses or call the neighbor's dog the wrong name. But he wasn't senile. He still fixed our leaky sink with nothing but tape and a prayer. He still remembered every hymn from church. These records had been forged, professionally, fabricated to paint my husband as incapable, vulnerable, and they were meant for court. I sat still for a long time, those pages spread across my lap, the house completely quiet, except for the tick of the old wall clock in the hall. It hit me all at once. Maura wasn't just trying to secure her place, she was trying to erase mine. My marriage, my memories, my home. She wasn't just after our money. She was after the entire story, trying to rewrite it with herself as the main character. I didn't cry. The tears had dried up weeks ago, replaced by something harder. Not anger exactly, but a kind of resolve, cold and precise. I gathered the papers in order, careful not to leave a crease or fingerprint out of place. I slid them back into the folder and returned it to its exact spot, like I'd never touched it. Then I walked into the kitchen, filled a glass with water, and drank it slowly, each sip anchoring me back to the present. She thinks I'm weak, I thought. She thinks I'll crumble quietly and disappear, that I'll let my legacy, everything I've worked for, be stolen while I pretend not to notice. No, she may have made my husband doubt himself. She may have tricked my son into mistaking obsession for love. But me? She hadn't counted on me finding my voice. That night, while Thomas was asleep, I pulled out my old notebook, the same one I used to jot recipes in. I turned to a blank page. At the top I wrote the date, and below that, with a firm, steady hand, found new will, no mention of me, forged medical papers, possible conservatorship attempt. I underlined it twice. That notebook wasn't for food anymore. It was for the truth. And from that moment forward, every lie I uncovered would have a page. Because the fight wasn't just coming, it had already begun. I didn't confront Thomas. Not yet. What would I even say? That I found a will where I was erased like chalk on a rainy sidewalk? That the woman he smiled at across dinner had forged documents about his mind and was playing him like a fiddle with a loose string? No, you don't corner a wounded animal. And Thomas, for all his silence, was bleeding on the inside. I could see it in the way he walked slower now, how he kept the TV louder than necessary, like he needed the noise to drown out the guilt. So I waited. I waited and watched and collected like a woman quietly sweeping up shards of glass so no one else gets cut. Maura kept coming by, She never said another word about the baby being Thomas's. That was the kind of poison she knew didn't need repeating. Once planted, it thrived in silence. Instead, she brought gifts, little things meant to seem thoughtful. A tea labeled Calm Mind, a book about organizing your life after 60. One day she brought a candle with a name I won't forget, Clean Slate. That one nearly made me laugh. She'd sit on the edge of the sofa and stroke her belly like she was cradling the future. Talk about paint colors and natural lighting. I just want what's best for the baby, you understand. Always the baby, never my child. It was always a concept, an idea, a prop in her show. One afternoon she left behind a parenting magazine on the coffee table, open to an ad for a luxury stroller, 5 times the cost of the one we'd bought for Betrayal when money was tight, and Thomas was still fixing cars on weekends. I didn't touch the magazine. I left it there like a warning sign, a red flag in glossy print. That evening I stood in the kitchen holding the tea she brought. It smelled like lemongrass and lies. I didn't drink it. I opened the window, poured it down the sink, and watched it swirl away. I could feel it then, the shift. She thought she was winning. That was her mistake. She mistook my stillness for surrender, my smile for weakness. But I had learned long ago that silence isn't submission. Sometimes silence is strategy. That night, I opened the drawer where I kept my notebook and pen. I wrote down a new entry, gifts increasing. Watch for manipulation. She believes I'm isolated. Use this. I wasn't isolated. I was focused. And it was time to find my leverage. Her mask was slipping in little ways. The way she'd glanced too long at the hallway mirror. The way she always knew just how much cash Thomas had withdrawn without looking at a receipt. She was too precise, too polished, like someone always preparing for a performance. And that's when I turned my eyes outward, toward the rest of the house. That's when I noticed Kyle, our gardener. Kyle had worked for us for 3 years. Tall, soft-spoken, careful with his hands. The kind of young man who says ma'am, even when no one's listening. He used to chat with Thomas about football scores and help him carry bags of mulch. But lately Kyle wouldn't look me in the eye. His movements were rushed, uneasy, and more than once I saw him stiffen when Maura pulled into the driveway. That was curious. I began to watch from the window when I knew he was working. I didn't spy, not really. I just observed, with patience. And one afternoon I saw it. She walked out the back door, not in heels or silk, but in plain sneakers. She moved fast, not floating like she usually did. She held something in her hand, a thick, white envelope. She met him by the garden shed. He shook his head, looked down. She leaned in close, hissed something sharp. He took the envelope like it burned. Then she walked away. That was no friendly gesture. That was hush money. I didn't react. I didn't confront him. Not yet. I needed to be sure. Because truth isn't a flash. It's a slow revealing. A light that grows brighter with every quiet step. That night, I opened my notebook again. Envelope to Kyle. Sudden shift in behavior. Confirmed connection. I looked at the entries stacking up. A timeline of quiet war. Each note, a thread pulling at the seams of her story. And I realized something. Maura wasn't just manipulating one man. She was constructing a network. Thomas, Badon, maybe even Kyle. All strung together by silence and shame. All believing they were alone. Each one thinking they had too much to lose. But I was outside her web now. And I was about to break every single strand. One truth at a time. The next morning, I baked cornbread. Not because I wanted to, I didn't even eat any of it. I baked it because the smell travels through screens, around corners, across yards. I knew Kyle would catch the scent as he trimmed the hedges by the front fence. I needed to draw him near without calling him in. I needed him to feel like this was still a home, not a courtroom. By 10:30, he knocked softly on the back screen door. "Smells real good, Miss Eleanor," he said, eyes low. I handed him a slice wrapped in a napkin. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. We stood there for a moment, awkward, like two actors waiting for someone to give them their next line. I wanted to speak, but not yet. Not until I knew he was ready. So I started slow. "That magnolia's looking real healthy this year," I said, nodding toward the far side of the yard. He followed my gaze. "Yes, ma'am. Blooms early this season. Must be all that rain. I remember when Thomas planted it. Said it would outlast us both. Said it would grow straight as long as it was never lied to. That did it. A flicker crossed Kyle's face like something flickering behind a curtain. A shift too quick to name, but deep enough to feel. I set my coffee down, wiped my hands on my apron, stepped onto the porch and walked with him to the tree. We stood beneath its branches, sunlight dappling the ground like puzzle pieces. Kyle, I said gently, I saw what she gave you. His back went stiff. His shoulders rose. I ain't done nothing wrong, he said quickly, defensively too quickly. I know you haven't, I replied, soft and steady. That's why I'm talking to you. He looked at me then. Really looked. I didn't want no part of this, he said, voice cracking like a boy's. I swear, Miss Eleanor, I didn't know what she was doing. Not at first. My heart beat slow and steady, like I'd rehearsed for this moment in my sleep. But now you do, I said. And she's got you tied in it just enough to take the fall if it all goes wrong. That envelope wasn't a gift. That was insurance. He blinked fast. Took a shaky breath. She said if I told anyone she'd say it was me. That I seduced her. That I got her pregnant. That I was obsessed. My stomach turned, not in shock, but in disgust. She hadn't just used him. She'd twisted the knife of fear into him too. She said I'd lose everything. My job. My reputation. Maybe even jail, if the story got twisted hard enough. And I believed her, Miss Eleanor. I did. He sat down on the edge of the planter box like his knees had given out. I crouched beside him, slow. My knees complained, but I didn't care. Kyle, I said quietly. Is the baby yours? His face crumpled like a sheet of paper in a clenched fist. He nodded once. I didn't know she was married when it happened, he whispered. She said Badon didn't love her, that he was broken, that she needed someone who saw her. And you saw her. He nodded again, shame deep in every line of his body. I should have known better. But she knows how to talk, how to make you feel like the only man in the world. And by the time I realized I was stuck, she said it'd ruin her life if I told anyone. It wasn't her life she was worried about, I said. It was her plan. He stared at the ground. I didn't know about the money, about Mr. Thomas, the will, the papers. I just thought I'd made a stupid mistake. I didn't know it was all connected until she started giving me things. Money, then threats, then both. I stood. My legs trembled, but not from weakness. Do you have proof, Kyle? He looked up slowly. I still got the messages. The ones where she said if I kept quiet, we'd all win in the end. And one where she sent me instructions about what to say if anyone asked. Keep them, I said. Don't delete a thing. We'll need it. He nodded. And then, without prompting, he said, She's the devil, Miss Eleanor. She smiled at me like she loved me, then turned around and made me feel like trash. And the worst part, I still feel sorry for her. Even now, I reached out and touched his shoulder, not to comfort, but to steady him, to ground both of us. That's how evil works, Kyle, I said. It makes you question your own kindness. He wiped his face with the sleeve of his shirt. I'm sorry, he said. Don't be. You just helped me find the key to the whole damn puzzle. We stood there for a long moment under the magnolia tree. It rustled gently above us, like it was listening, like it understood. I walked back to the house with slow, even steps. The web was unraveling, and for the first time I could see the end of it. I set the table like I always had, every fork polished, every napkin folded. The good plates, the ones with the faded blue flowers around the edge, passed down from my mother. Candles, not lit yet, but ready. Not for mood, for witness. The house was silent, but not the kind of silence that breaks your heart. This was a different stillness. Sharp, alert, like the moment right before a storm when the trees stop rustling and the world holds its breath. The briefcase sat under my chair. Inside every receipt, every statement, every screenshot, Kyle's text messages, the forged will, the fake diagnosis, all of it arranged in neat files. Cold, paper proof of everything Maura had built her kingdom on. Thomas was in the kitchen, silent but present. He hadn't said much since the night I showed him the notebook and said plainly, I know. That silence had been his answer. And when he nodded, just once, I knew we were on the same side again. We didn't need to dig through the past anymore. We were preparing for what came next. Maura arrived 10 minutes early. Of course she did. She was radiant, smug in a soft pink blouse, one hand cradling her belly like a trophy. She kissed my cheek with the same lips she used to lie. "You look rested, Eleanor," she said, like it was a compliment, like she hadn't been the reason I hadn't slept for weeks. Badon came behind her, quiet as a shadow. His face looked thinner. His eyes held the dullness of a man lost in his own life. He sat down without a word. Maura sat beside him, still smiling. We ate fried chicken, cornbread, string beans with too much pepper, just how Thomas liked them. The meal moved like theater, clinks of silverware, murmurs of "pass the salt," Maura chattering about nursery colors and the importance of early language development. I watched her with the calm of a woman who'd already read the end of the book. When the last bite of peach cobbler was taken, I gave Thomas a small nod. He cleared his throat. "Maura," he said, his voice low and level, "we received your email about the trust fund." She straightened in her chair like a cat ready to pounce. "I knew you'd come around," she purred. "It's what's best for the baby. But before we go any further," he said, "we think it's time for some clarity." Her smile faltered, just a fraction, then returned. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice all innocence and lace. I reached under the table and lifted the briefcase onto the linen runner. The soft click of the latches echoed louder than anything said that evening. One by one, I laid the papers out on the table, neat rows, like a dealer laying down cards in a game where the stakes were souls. I spoke each word carefully, my voice a scalpel. "These are the loan applications filed under Badon's name, the ones you arranged behind his back." A pause. "Paper down. These are the payments from those loans, and the commissions transferred directly to you." Another pause. "Paper down. This is the draft of the will, the one where Thomas has supposedly lost his mind, and I no longer exist." Maura's mouth parted, but nothing came out. "And here," I said, sliding the last sheet, "is the report from the lab. The DNA test comparing your hair to Kyle's." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I looked at her the way a woman looks at something she's finally finished cleaning up, a mess that no longer scares her. Silence. Badon stared at the documents. His hands were trembling. His lips moved, but no words formed. He turned to Maura. The betrayal registered slow, like a train finally pulling into a station it never meant to reach. "You told me the baby was mine," he whispered. Maura stood suddenly, like a child caught lying with chocolate on her face. "You people are insane," she spat. This is all lies, fabricated. She's turning you against me." But even her voice didn't sound convinced anymore. Thomas stood. "If you speak another word," he said quietly, "it will be to our lawyer, not to this family." I remained seated. "You can go upstairs now," I told her. "You can pack your things, and you can leave this house tonight, or we take every piece of this to the authorities by morning. Fraud, extortion, attempted conservatorship, pick your charges." She looked around the table, searching for a hand to hold, a heart to manipulate. There were none left. She left with nothing but a suitcase and a glare. And when the front door clicked shut, the silence that followed was heavy, but it was honest. For the first time in a long time. The night Maura left, the house didn't cheer. It didn't feel triumphant or righteous. It just exhaled, like it had been holding its breath through months of lies, and finally could breathe again. Thomas sat in his armchair, his hands folded in his lap like a man waiting for judgment. He wasn't the same man who used to whistle while trimming the hedges or sneak late-night bowls of ice cream when he thought I was asleep. No, he was older now, not just in body but in spirit, worn thin by secrets and shame. But when I looked at him, I didn't feel rage anymore. I felt understanding, because I had seen it clearly now. He hadn't betrayed me to chase passion or escape. He had fallen into a trap, and once he realized how deep he was, he froze. That was his crime, cowardice, not cruelty, and that was something I could forgive. We sat in the living room with the lights low and the fire cold, just the two of us and the soft tick of the hallway clock. No one spoke for a long time, and then slowly, quietly, Thomas reached over and took my hand. "I didn't know how to stop her," he said, barely a whisper, "and I didn't think I deserved to be saved. I nodded. You didn't, I said. But I did. He looked at me, and for the first time in months, I saw the man I married flicker back into his eyes. The dawn was another story. He didn't say much after Maura left, just sat on the porch for hours that night, shoulders hunched, face buried in his hands. At one point, I brought him a glass of water. He didn't look up, just whispered, I didn't want to see it, Mom. I know, I said. A few days later, he asked for help, said he wanted to get better, admitted the gambling, admitted that he'd lied about jobs, about clients, about everything. It was like watching a dam break, all the shame spilling out in one tidal wave. We got him into a program, something out of town, quiet, long-term. I drive him to the bus myself. He hugged me before boarding, the way he used to when he was little, tight, like he was afraid I'd disappear. He said, I'll make this right. And I said, no, son, you'll just make it honest. That's enough. After he left, I spent a week cleaning the house, not just dusting and wiping. I mean deep cleaning. Every drawer, every closet, every corner Maura had touched. I threw out candles that smelled like her, magazines with her notes scribbled in the margins, tea she'd brought that never tasted right. I opened windows and let the breeze carry whatever remained of her away. Then, one chilly evening, I lit a fire in the hearth. I sat with Thomas and we burned the fake will together, piece by piece, watching the lies curl and turn to ash. The flames licked at the edges of the paper until it all vanished, leaving nothing but smoke and freedom. It didn't fix everything, but it was a beginning. The weeks that followed were slow and quiet. We fell into a new rhythm, not the one we had before, but something steadier, truer. We talked more, ate dinner at the table again, sometimes just beans and toast, but it tasted better now, like food made in peace. I kept writing in the notebook, not about betrayal or lies, but about things I wanted to remember. The sound of Kyle's apology, the look in Thomas's eyes when he said he was sorry, the way my own voice didn't shake when I told Maura to leave. And then one Sunday, I took that notebook with me to church. After the service, I joined a small circle of women who met in the fellowship hall. Women my age, mostly. Some wore their sadness like jewelry, others like armor. But they all had stories. For weeks, I just listened. And then one day, I spoke. I told them about the house, about the lies, about how long a woman can go without hearing her own name said with kindness, about what it feels like to watch your whole life try to vanish, and what it takes to hold on. No one interrupted, no one pitied. They just nodded, the way people do when they've lived some version of the truth you're speaking. And in that quiet circle, I felt it, not just healing, but purpose. These days, I still wear my old Skechers, still bake cornbread, still sit on the porch and watch the neighborhood boys ride their bikes past like Badon used to. But now, I walk a little taller, not because I won a war, but because I survived one. The magnolia tree in the yard is blooming again, full and proud, leaves glossy in the sunlight. I trimmed it myself last week. Kyle offered to help, but I told him I needed to do it on my own, and I did. There's a strength in that tree, the kind that doesn't come from being untouched, but from growing back after storms. I think I'm like that now, and maybe someone out there needs to hear this. If that's you, then let me say it plain. You're not weak for being hurt. You're not broken because someone tried to break you. You're still here. So tell your story, and if you're ready, I'd love to hear it too.